I'm joined by Rob Reiner, actor and director of Shock and Awe, Dahlia Lithwick, who's a senior editor and legal correspondent for Slate, and Karine Jean-Pierre, senior advisor for MoveOn.org. Rob, thank you for joining us. There's another layer of concern here. This Supreme Court, when it's full up with 9 justices, will decide the fate very well of this president. We've got a special counsel loaded for bear, all kinds of issues of obstruction of justice and possible collusion with the Russians, and how what materials and what testimonies have to be accepted, whether he has to testify or not. And they're going to let him pick one of the people to decide his own fate.
That's the biggest problem. I don't think we should get hung up on the egregious effects of what Mitch McConnell did to Barack Obama and a tit-for-tat kind of thing. We have a president of the United States that right now is under investigation for possibly conspiring with a foreign enemy power to disrupt our democracy and steal an election. I don't think we want, as Americans, to allow somebody who is possibly colluding with a foreign enemy to making choices that are going to affect our lives for the next 30, 40 years. That's the issue. And make no mistake about it. We cannot allow this. We have to see what happens with the Mueller investigation, whether or not Donald Trump is guilty or not guilty of major crimes. And if he is, he should not be allowed to pick the next Supreme Court justice.
Dolly, the question there, it seems to me, is a matter of timing. Do they have the vote after the election or after this Mueller has made his call and the court decisions have been made? You know, it seems to me you could also think about getting Kennedy to stick around for a while and serve a few more months. It wouldn't kill him. Serve a few more months while we do have a full court without having to put Trump's pick in there to decide Trump's future.
I don't think there's any chance of Kennedy sticking around. I think he quite deliberately chose that July date. That's when he's out. I do think it leaves the rest of us confounded by this problem of, are we going to really let Donald Trump vet somebody, cross-examine somebody, set out litmus tests? He's already told us he has a litmus test around Roe, litmus tests, and do the kind of thing we know he's done to Jeff Sessions and Jim Comey and ask for pledges of loyalty. And while I'd like to believe that no nominee is going to pledge that loyalty, it just seems to me unbelievably problematic that the president is going to pick a judge who will, as you just heard, very likely sit in judgment over some piece of what Mueller produces, whether it's can a president pardon himself, can a sitting president be indicted. All of that could very likely come before the court. So it's a very odd thing that Trump is in the business of vetting that person right now.
Karine, the people are going to have to fight this nomination. They're going to be the Democratic leaders. They've got to get out there and make this case. Whether they don't have parliamentary chicks or whatever up their sleeve, they got to slow this thing down till the voters get to talk first. I think. Your thoughts?
No, that's exactly right. I think that they can't play nice. There is no playing nice here. Everything is at stake. Our fundamental rights are at stake here. When you talk about affirmative action, abortion, when we talk about environmental issues, when we talk LGBTQ issues, everything is at stake. And it's true. The one thing that is also very scary, this is like the worst case scenario here, Chris, because the other thing, too, is with Russia, with the Russia investigation, he could be buying himself a get out of jail free card with this pick. This is someone who doesn't believe in the rule of law. He thinks he's above the law. And even during the Nixon times, the Supreme Court had to jump in Watergate. So there's a lot here at risk. And we have to make sure that the senators, Democratic senators on the inside match the intensity on the outside that they're going to see from activists, from voters, from Americans.
Rob, I know you care about these social issues and individual rights issues like choice, but I think this Supreme Court, as by 5-4, has shown its amazing brazenness. It picked a president, W, who took us to war, and about your movie, Shock and Awe, that's very relevant. It took us to war with a president who was the only president I can imagine on this planet who would have taken us into that war. They picked him, the Supreme Court. Then they decide they're going to let unlimited money play a role in the United States political elections with the Citizens United. And no check on the power of people to buy guns. No limit. It used to be something to do with founding a militia. They dropped all that language. This court is unbounded in its power. And it's not just the social issues we fight about, like abortion and marriage equality. It's everything. Right. And it's all political.
Yeah. And wherever you come down on any of these issues, I would hope that as an American, you don't want a potential criminal choosing one of our Supreme Court justices. That's what it comes down to. I mean, I don't care whether you're pro-life or pro-choice. I happen to be, pro-choice, and I happen to be in favor of gay rights and civil rights and workers' rights and all those things, and those things are in jeopardy. But wherever you come down ideologically, we can all agree that we shouldn't have a potential criminal choosing our next Supreme Court justice.
So let's talk numbers. We often do it at election time, but now we have to look at it again. There's 50 Republicans in the Senate. There's 51 if John McCain could get back and vote, although his vote would be up in the air, I think, even on this one. And we have 49 Democrats. It couldn't be closer. Democrats are also looking, of course, to try to get two moderate Republican senators, Susan Collins of Maine and Lisa Murkowski, both women of Alaska, as allies in stopping a Trump Supreme Court pick. Well, today, Senator Collins was asked what she would expect from any possible nominee.
Senator, but does a nominee have to commit to you that he or she would uphold the precedent of Roe versus Wade in order to get your support?
I always have a thorough interview with judicial nominees for the Supreme Court, for circuit courts, and one of the questions that I always ask is, do they respect precedent? From my perspective, Roe v. Wade is an important precedent, and it is settled law.
Well, Senator Murkowski of Alaska didn't explicitly address the issue, but said in a statement, my standards for Supreme Court nominees are extremely high. It is my longstanding practice to carefully scrutinize the qualifications of judicial nominees and to cast an independent vote. Let me go to Dahlia and then back to everybody else. I've had experience with Trump on this, Dahlia. I asked him whether a woman should be punished, and he said there needs to be some form of punishment. Now, that's a weird answer. I have no idea what he was talking about. Was he talking about imprisonment? Is he talking about fining or some new form of punishment? I don't know what he's talking about, but that's what he talks like. He also talked in the Wilding incident where those kids were accused of murder in Central Park. He said we got to execute kids who are in their sub-teens, basically. So we know his views are harsh, and they're not about individual rights or the rights of defendants, really, or young people. So if he picks somebody like himself, man or woman, it's pretty scary. Suppose he picks a Trump in that person's thinking. So how can you count on him picking a Justice Kennedy in a million years? Just a thought.
Well, I think, Chris, on the issue of Roe v. Wade, he's promised us. He ran on the overt promise for the first time in history. I will have a litmus test. Here are 25 people. Each of them will pledge to overturn Roe. So this is not in dispute. He's pledged it. But I would go further and say be really careful about fetishizing the language of what you heard Susan Collins say was, as long as it's good precedent and that person promises it's good precedent, I'm going to be okay. You can do away with Roe v. Wade. You can hollow it out from the center. It's been happening in the states for years now without explicitly overturning it. So to fetishize the language of will this person or will they not overturn Roe is to really miss the big game. Are they going to hollow out the core of Roe?
Well, are they going to get rid of undue burden? Are they going to say there can be a burden? You have to go to a hospital. All these things they've come up with in Texas to make it more difficult for a person living in a rural setting to have that choice.
Yeah, I mean, look, the list that he's been talking about, the 25 list, that the Federalist list, the outside conservative group, everybody on that list is to the far right of Kennedy. He's not going to replace Kennedy. So we have to understand we can't be fooled here. Whoever he picks is going to try and get rid of Roe versus Wade.
Well,
I mean, that is just,
wants that.
And he wants that. That's who he wants. So that's what's going to happen. The person that gets picked is going to cement all of Donald Trump's horrible policies.
I want to go back to Rob on that. Rob, I don't know if I've ever talked to you about this, but were you taken with the fact he said to me there needs to be, in his interesting language, almost creepy language, there needs to be some form of punishment for the woman? I asked about it. You mean for the woman? He said, yes, the woman. He thought about it.
Yes.
And then some form of punishment. That's sort of a biblical kind of answer.
And you were the only one to be able to nail him down on that and get his true answer to that. And I put it to people. The pro-life people think of abortion as murder. They say it. They've said it over and over. Well, what is the punishment for murder? It's either life imprisonment or the death penalty. Yeah. So What are we talking about here? Are we saying that the woman and the doctor both have to be put in jail for the rest of their lives or executed? I mean, what are we talking about? This is crazy. This is absolutely crazy. And so much more is going to be at stake than just the abortion rights, although that's going to be front and center. But how do you adjudicate that?
Anyway, I saw your movie, Shock and Awe. I got an advanced view of your movie. I think it's very.
Hey there, I'm Chris Hayes from MSNBC. Thanks for watching MSNBC on YouTube. If you want to keep up to date with the videos we're putting out, you can click subscribe just below me or click over on this list to see lots of other great videos.